Welcome to The Breadwinners, the podcast about the never-ending hustle and its impact on all aspects of our lives. We're interested in what it takes to keep everything going. This podcast is about women, working, money, and family. We consider the research, talk to experts, and share our takes on what we're learning every day about breadwinning. I'm Jennifer Owens. I write about working, wellness, and women, and founded the Working Mother Research Institute. And most days I'm joined by my co-host, Raquel Ellison. Today, we're back for a special series, talking to guests about the challenges facing the sandwich generation, meaning those of us juggling kids, parents, and careers all at the same time. Our guest today knows that too. Tamar Smith, thank you so much for sharing your sandwich story with us today.
Thank you. Hi, Jennifer.
So you are a working mom of two teens, but when I first met you, you were the working mom of one tiny toddler, and we were both just trying to make it to childcare drop off and pick up at the same time while still making it to work. And our kids picked each other to be their first ever friends, and we went through every stage together, right? First, like stands, them standing up. I mean, it's that early.
Literally.
First sleepovers, first everything. And now this is their first year in college.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, all those milestones they went through together with our families and their friends and this whole neighborhood, really.
I know. I just saw a picture of a bunch of our elementary school kids going to sixth grade together and how traumatic that was.
It was such a big change. Big kids.
Such a big change. So what's happening now? What does your life look like at home right now?
Yeah, well, as you said, my older daughter just went off to college, and now we're a veteran of 2 weeks in.
Woo!
Just like you. And there's so much anticipation leading up to the moment, the move in, the leaving, the imagining, right? Imagining how the change will be. And then the sort of come down after where you start to get into a different groove. Things are going well so far. The big veteran, as I said, of the 2 weeks in. And I guess, we're all going day by day, with all of it.
Well, and how long did it take you to recover from move-in as someone? And I will tell you, it took me at least a week. And it wasn't just physical.
No, exactly.
It was all that ramp up to it.
Yeah, the ramp up was just incredible. I mean, the day itself is, filled with the actual physical, the drive, the wake up, the early wake up, the carrying of the boxes up and down and all of this and, sort of running around, getting the kid getting the ID and all that stuff. Yeah, we hit tons of traffic coming back because it was the first Hurricane Henri, a couple of weeks ago, and just collapsed, in every possible way. A few days of just sort of sleeping and wandering around going, oh, okay, hey, new life, Yeah. So, a few days.
And then our younger kids who are essentially the same age.
Yeah.
All of a sudden became, and they're not only children. I mean, we still have our olders, but all of a sudden they were born into always having a sibling at home. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, what are you up to, kid?
Well, exactly. I said to our younger, who is starting high school this year, as soon as this college stuff is kind of done, we'll be able to pay attention. And then she's fine with that. That's a huge transition for sure. And I think we're still navigating it. Some people joked, she's going to love having her own room. And sure, that's true. But, we very much want to make sure our older girl has a place to come home to. So we haven't torn the house apart or moved out her bed or anything. And
my mom sold her house, and I know it was financially, it was the right thing for my mom to do or whatever. But we moved her from her home to this 2-bedroom home. My Christmas break, winter break home from my freshman year. I really got the message. Hey, there's no bed for you here, sweetie girl. There's a couch.
We talked about that. It should be, really this one small room that they've shared since they were tiny kids. And we could really change this room around, but all of us agreed, and the younger daughter as well. Let's just keep everything the way it is. Let's have, a space to come home to.
Just because I would like to think, and I visit my mom all the time. It wasn't that bad, but there was a moment where I thought, where would I? I guess, you're flown and grown, as my brother likes to say.
Well, and that's, the grown thing is probably, maybe that's one of your other topics, but just the transition of kid to adult. It's not automatic, right? There's no switch that goes off that suddenly,
Yeah.
you're 18. Well, so long. It's a transition for everybody.
Well, and what has surprised you about it? And I'll say that one thing that has surprised me is how different already her experience at college is. And I'll say, because I went to a college for journalism where it was all about, it was like a gotcha kind of, it was a boot camp mentality. And we're going to, everybody got an F at least once, and you kind of wore, the horror with pride. And like hers is like, oh, we want to talk to you about, we know this is a transition, and the mental aspect of it and the emotion. And I think, wow, maybe that's a little different.
Yeah. Well, I guess for my school wasn't so very different from my daughter's. So it definitely wasn't as focused as your program must have been on a practical
I don't know that anyone is.
Yeah, exactly. I was a liberal arts major school, and I didn't declare a major probably until a year in. And there wasn't that kind of pressure. So the experience so far hasn't been so very different. The dorm setup and other things, it's a much smaller school than I went to, is different. But yeah, so far that part of it seems pretty similar.
Well, that's good. I mean, because it's making me really rethink all that I assumed, that this was my only experience. And so I thought this was it. And then the connection. So our elder kid is texting us with questions and like, how do I do this? Or what about this? And we're happy to be there. And then we're happy when she does something on her own. It's a weird mix because I don't know about you. When I went off to college, it was, you had to call home with the calling card.
Mm-hmm.
It was a big deal to call home.
No,
so
absolutely.
I was on my own.
Absolutely. You're right. You're absolutely right about that. That is extremely different. I think one of my dorm mates had an in-the-wall phone, in the common area, and we would call from there. But yeah, there weren't many, many calls like that. And of course, the parents, my father certainly wasn't as available. And I certainly did navigate it on my own.
Yeah.
Not completely alone, but absolutely. There were plenty of visits home. I wasn't that far from where I grew up. But yeah, the navigating of everything from the class picks to, getting your ID to the meal plan, all of that that was absolutely independent. And there's definitely more contact because it's so easy now.
Yeah.
And there's nothing, and I sometimes think, just like you said, is this too much? And then other
pros and cons. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And then I realized that, frankly, some of the ways, and we've talked about this before in our friendship, the ways in which we were expected to navigate everything on our own, not always positive.
Right.
We could have really used some guidance. I had very little. I had very little. I knew very little about what was available to me in college, resources, anything, study abroad. Those things seemed completely foreign to me. And my daughter certainly has more and a lot more support as a person in general.
You really feel the step of the standing on the shoulders of giants kind of like, I think my mom put herself through college and like she went late so she could work and save money and make it happen. And she remembers how tough it was to work her way through college. And then I remember kind of being on my own too much for it. And it's funny, we're all trying to like say to this next generation, my mom said as a graduation gift, what she wanted to do was give our daughter 2 chunks of money to buy books. This, like first half, second half, though it turns out our school now is a quarterly thing. But in any case, because it was so important to her, she never felt she had the money she needed to buy books. And that she's always held on to that. And mine is like, I never felt I had the information I needed to know about like study abroad. It's like, I wonder what our kids will do for their kids. What is it that we're not doing for them?
My dad never went to college. He did not go. He started to go to a city university when he was, 18 or 19, and then got married at age 19 and had to drop out and work. And so he never finished. And to him, college was, first of all, the ultimate privilege. This is amazing. Everything is here. I went to a state university, so it wasn't a fancy place, but nevertheless, it, was
what an amazing investment in your future.
Yeah.
It's a privilege to be able to do that. Yes,
Absolutely.
exactly.
And not have to work at full time at age 19 and have a child on the way. So for him, he simply didn't know a lot of the things that are that we do know. He didn't have the guidance to offer because he didn't know about what there was. And I think that, later in life, he said that he wished he had, and that he'd been able to offer more of that information and support. For him, it was just, hey, you're not working full time and you don't have a kid. So
yeah, that's my shoulders you're stepping on, right?
You're already like head and shoulders above the life that, turned out great for him after many years of extremely difficult, times and hard work. But that was also a different time when you could find a job that was decent without a college degree, which we all know.
It's tougher and tougher, right?
So much harder now. And he was able to do that. But yeah, he looked at my college experience as, my God, this is like a paradise.
Yeah, look at this gift.
The library is right there, and your classes are here, and you have this whole atmosphere, So I am actually the first person in my family to attend college at the sort of right time, from 18 to 21. That hadn't happened before. So, yeah.
Well, and because we talk about family finances too, it's so different with each generation in that. So my mom worked at Filene's Basement, and she went to school late, and she's very proud of the fact that she graduated with her class. Like, she worked her way, but she was able to do it. She got no help from her family, and she made this happen on her own. So then here I come, and I went to a private university, so it was way too expensive. Later on, as a subchapter, my brother would look at me and say, "That's stupid." And I would go to a state university where they gave him a good ride and but I did it, but I could never have afforded to work my way through school. So I graduated with loans. I worked all the time, but it was never this cost ratio. And now our kids are going. And I think that ratio is even worse than when we were doing it.
Oh, my God, yes. As I said, I went to a state university, which I can say in New York State was $6,000 for a year of school. So 4 years of school, around $25,000, which was nothing to sneeze at for a very low income family such as we were. However, it was doable through pulling together a lot of resources. That same school right now is that same cost for 1 year.
Really?
Yeah. SUNYs are between 25 and 30,000, depending on which one it is. And so 4 years, over $100,000. And that's for a state school. So the things that we did to afford it, which were, a student loan, my dad's savings, me working on campus job, and the summer, and I would contribute all those things together just for $6,000 a year. Now, you're right. How is an on-campus work-study job going to pay your way through school? It's not. How could a summer job for a kid pay your way for school? It can't happen. And when you're going to a private university, it's even more so.
You just assume there's debt now. The student loan, we were just happy to have a package that figured out how I could go to college, and I think that's where we blindly went in, because it was like, well, we'll just figure it out. In fact, I remember my mom saying, you get into the college that is right for you and we'll figure it out. And figuring it out meant the decades of paying off my student loan, that's part of the figuring it out on a reporter's salary. So, and I think a lot about that. Gwen is going to have student loans. That's going to be a given. And I think baby number 2 will have student loans. How are you guys thinking about it?
Well, I feel incredibly fortunate to have any resources at all to tap into, because like I mentioned with my dad, we worked together to do it, and then plus the student loan, but there were 0 other resources. There were no other relatives a sibling in any way.
The long lost aunt. We all need a long lost aunt that
Zero.
names us in the will.
Nobody gave me $1, aside from my dad and me, and that was it. And again, very low income. So it was difficult. We pieced it together, and things worked out. And yes, I paid off a student loan, which luckily wasn't too astronomical because it was a SUNY school, state university. For our daughter, we have some resources that are more resources now than when I was a kid, and I feel very fortunate. Her grandparents started, this 18 years ago, right? 529 plans.
Wow.
For each of our kids. And at the time, 18 years ago, right, in 2003, I was kind of like, 529 plan, what's that?
Yeah, I know, okay.
Didn't know what it was. And college savings, I was like, wow, it seems so far in the future. And, what do you do? They said no. And over the years, and I'm so grateful because that was something we were able to tap into for this year.
That's awesome.
Savings, of course, we've been saving like crazy for years. The school gave our daughter a grant, which, boy, did that help. That knocked off, 17,000, 18,000 off of the tuition, thank goodness. And she earned that. So, that's part of a contribution that and a student loan. So all of these things.
Yeah.
And then we barely are making it.
That's us too.
We paid that first tuition bill and it was nauseating. And as I think you brought up, we're doing this. So how many more times?
Yeah. Right? Because it occurs to me, it's not the one kid. Ours will overlap. And so ours is a 7-year commitment, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And of nauseating tuition bills.
That's right. And having to carefully calculate out every single moment of the next 8 years. And for our daughter, while there was an element of what your mom said to you, get into a good school that suits you and then we'll figure it out. But we couldn't just be that. We had to be very clear with her. There are schools we cannot afford, even with every single thing we could possibly bring to bear. And she got into one school that was impossible. We would have been thousands and thousands of dollars short. There would have been no way to pay it.
Yeah.
And we had to tell her. And, she.
And then baby number two.
Yeah.
Because it's not just her. You've
right.
got and your family budget and your retirement and your vanity, I know.
No, and I feel very strongly that while education obviously is, an incredible investment and a privilege for those who can go. I think the figure is something like only 30% of students get to go to a 4-year college in the United States.
Right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And that means 70%, and then some part of that maybe goes to 2-year colleges, but huge portion of people don't get to go at all. And so, the privilege is real and the struggle is real. And that's all very important investment. On the other hand, I'm certainly not willing to barter away our entire lives, including our second child's lives, for one school that's so expensive that it makes our lives impossible and impossible to enjoy anything else for the rest of it. And, we can't do that. There's got to be a balance. So we're holding on, and I hope that balance works for everybody involved,
Yeah, because in our family, when I went off to school, my brother, who was 7.5 years younger than me, had plenty of time to look and to see what I was doing to make it work. And for him, cost was a huge factor. Like he wanted to go to school. He was a very bright guy. And in fact, he later decided he wanted to get a law degree, and he got into some fabulous school that was going to be way expensive. And he had gone to University of Cincinnati. We grew up in Ohio, and Cincinnati came back and said, we'll give you a free ride through law school too. And he didn't particularly dream of staying at the same university, but for him, the cost factor was so big. And he was like, I just want the degree.
Yeah.
And you know what that enabled him to do was he decided he wanted to be in education. And he started out as a 4th grade teacher and wanted to kind of get, learn about school. And he could do that because he owed $5,000 for 2 degrees. And he had that flexibility. Whereas I came out and I owed $26,000 for.
And at that time, my God.
Oh my gosh. My first job was
And they may as well be a
16.5.
million. Yeah, no, absolutely. My first job out of college, I made, I think, $18,000 a year, and that it wasn't 1950. It was 1990, which I know is a long time ago. But what I'm saying is not 100 years ago. It was a
Right?
low salary. And had my student loans been at that level, which they luckily weren't, or even more.
Yeah.
I mean, life would have been just almost impossible, really.
Well, and that's the thought that because then terms of bankrupting the whole family for some
Yeah.
college,
Mm-hmm.
but also their future, because baby number ones, if you could graduate with no debt, then the world is your oyster, right? And the oyster shrinks a bit with each thing they owe because all that money that they go into paying debt, they couldn't invest in the market. They can't take certain jobs that are really low paying but have great experience. It's a bigger thing than just even the hard dollar now
Yeah.
of the cost.
Agreed.
But it's so hard because also you don't, you want to tell your precious baby they can have anything they want, kind of. You don't want to.
You
We're
know
not.
me, Jennifer. I'm not.
Yeah, I know. I knew it before even out of my mouth.
Yeah, no, I mean, I really do, for me anyway, do see our family and our community, and sort of, I don't know, maybe I see her role in it, or the kids' role in a bigger way. I mean, I think that, and I really, at least for us, it was really important to be just very straightforward about this. And the thing is that I was more than open, and so was our daughter, to going to maybe a city university or a community college. I'm very pro all of that. And I think that I took classes at some of those schools over the years here in the city, and they were great, great.
Oh, definitely. I mean, we're a community college family, as
Yeah,
you know,
right.
in our
Really
family,
good
and
education. And that
there's a
offers
lot there. Yep.
yeah, and that offers such great opportunities. One thing it didn't offer a lot of times was any kind of on-campus living.
Yeah.
And as we live in you've seen our apartment, tiny, tiny place where she shares a tiny room, it,
Just prepping her for dorm life, I'm
yeah,
sure.
no, totally. But the idea that she really did want a place to go to college, that was, that was something she really, really wanted, which I think we all agreed it was a great thing. And that probably staying at home and going to school wouldn't have worked well. But yeah, I am such a big proponent of just, less expensive school that is, like you said, just as good.
Frees you up.
Excellent schools. And boy, does it free you up in a million ways.
It really does. Because I carried that student loan debt for a very long time. It's always been there. And so, in the minimum, it's money I can't put into retirement. And I am so happy, I met so many wonderful people at my college. It made me who I am in some fundamental ways. I don't regret it, but I did not think about the implication of the debt until I was really an adult, like decades into paying for it, thinking, oh, what I could be doing with that.
Yeah. That's
so,
huge.
Well, and speaking of budgets, can we spend 2 minutes on how, I don't know if this is going to be the case. Will our budgets change at home with one child? I know our laundry has changed. You guys you're such a good budgeter. So I look is it going to change?
Well, yeah, we have been thinking about that. I mean, the house has never been neater. That's for sure.
Now. For dang sure.
And yes, right. My husband, who's he's the person who does the weekly food shopping, said that even in the first 2 weeks, he
could feel it.
Yeah, he's definitely saw a reduction. But on the other hand, we've already paid for a meal plan, so I know. We have paid that. So, and by the way, I don't know how it is with your daughter at school, but I'm emphasizing very strongly to ours that majority of her food needs to come from that meal plan and not from the other, cash options on campus.
Right.
It's prepaid, friend. Go to that dining hall and have that food. Okay. But yeah, so I don't know. I mean, we have already paid all that. So maybe taking that into account, the budget hasn't changed that much. I mean, over the pandemic, in some strange ways, our budget weirdly, I guess maybe because of just not eating out at all, not going to movies, not getting our haircuts. We actually weirdly were able to save some of that money and
us too.
Yeah. So maybe, but I don't know if we've felt it
I
yet.
don't know. I haven't been able to see the full, but I think it'll take
Yeah,
us a little time.
I
Like,
think
yeah,
so,
if you
right?
account for taking away tuition, but seriously, the food plan.
Yeah, the room and board. I mean, we've already paid a
Yeah,
lot into those, so I don't. If you consider that part of the family's budget, which I think we should, I'm not sure that it goes down.
it's going to be any different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, we'll see. I guess.
We're just
I
constantly
know.
dreaming of
It's like
saving money
minus
somehow.
one person. Does that make a difference?
I was just wondering because
Not
you
yet.
guys are so good at that.
You think
That,
so?
and
Oh, that's
yeah.
funny.
Well,
Maybe.
yes, I do think so. I think you guys and Craig and Jennifer Webb, who have also been in the club with me, are just masters at making it work. Like, making the budget work. Not in that like we're living the high life, but just that you can live a life. And I think you're very inspirational.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I just don't. I think when you're in it, you're just like I feel like I'm
I know.
next. I mean, you look around but we're also we have two incomes, which is I did not have growing up for the most part. It was a one single parent household, pretty low income, as I said. So it is a different world for us. We're fortunate in that way, but yeah, we put a lot of effort into it.
And being responsible for it. I think
Yeah,
that's what,
I think so.
that's what's good that I see from an outsider and then think, we need to live more like that.
But I am a major proponent in having fun also with the family,
Yes.
and really, really trying to do things together and you do as well.
Your baby number 2 are now our go-to pet sitter.
Yeah.
I don't know if she brought home the message that I had sent to her because you guys were getting ready to go on vacation. And
Yeah.
I said, your mom and her ability to find places where you guys go and your freaking Airbnbs. She says, and I'll tell you what baby number 2 said to me. Yeah, she's really good at that. She really finds interesting places. And and I immediately thought, I wonder if she's ever told her mother that she appreciates this. But
They
I
actually
send you
have,
that word.
which is nice. But yeah, no, I'm a big believer in I would say sacrificing plenty of other things that don't matter as much to me. But if you can take a vacation for a couple of weeks and really just have a good time together, that's kind of a priority. It allows you to just have some time that you know how it is. You're normally
Yep.
running nonstop. My job is extremely busy, and yours is, oh, you always have been. And the whole family is running nonstop all year round. If there's an opportunity and if you're lucky enough to be able to do it, even if it's honestly a local place, it's not like fanciness.
No, no.
More just like take the time if you can. Yeah. So I do
I
try.
love it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us on The Breadwinners. I encourage you to email us anytime at thebreadwinnerspod@gmail.com or visit us at thebreadwinnerspodcast.com. Please remember to subscribe and to rate and review us. It really helps us grow. And until next week, keep hustling.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.